Hello, and welcome back to the Investor Financing Podcast. I just got a free coaching call today, so I'm pretty excited with our guest, Joe Edgar. He's the CEO of TenantCloud, and he's got an amazing background. He got his first rental property at 14 years old. Now, most 14-year-olds are busy riding bikes and doing things, so he definitely comes from an entrepreneurial background. He's worked with politics, venture capital funds. He knows a lot about C-PACE financing, so he's got a really diverse background, and I think that gives him a lot of credibility. He's invested in a lot of companies, and then he several years ago he started TenantCloud, and TenantCloud is an all-in-one inclusive software for property managers and landlords, and you can list your rental properties, screen tenants, collect rent, bookkeeping. You can even do roommates, which I was looking at. That's a huge niche right now because nobody can afford to own their own place, and people are doing co-living now. Co-living is a huge emerging trend. So it's gonna be, you can do e-sign accounting. So it's really a one-stop shop for property managers to run a business, and that's what I think most property managers out there needed. Right? Everybody didn't know how to collect rent. It sounds like an easy process, but for me, I live in Las Vegas and I'm trying to collect rent in Pennsylvania, and that's challenging, right? Like, can I get somebody to write a check? And we know that that's not a very good way to be a property manager. So ACH and a portal to collect rent is just a huge, one of the main problems that we face. So welcome to the show, Joe. It's exciting to have such a entrepreneur join us here today because you've got a lot of experience, and you've already given me a lot of value even before we went live. So I know you're going to bring a tremendous value to our viewers and listeners.
I don't know about that, but we'll definitely give it a try.
Okay, so at 14 years old, can you kind of walk me through like how you got involved in real estate at such a young age?
Yeah, I mean, so I was telling you I'm one of 13, so a lot of kids in the family. And my father swung a hammer. My mother was a janitor, so on the weekends we had to go clean church. And so that's where she did, was more on the weekends. And on the weekdays or after school, or you can imagine we hated Labor Day because we literally labored. We, did construction, and you start out picking up boards and nails to, putting up walls and, roof and, everything from electrical to plumbing to, framing, roofing, and sheetrock and in between. So yeah, it was everything. So, and my father had gotten into some kind of, looking back, it was really like a get rich quick kind of scheme, but it was like, get involved in rental properties. So it was interesting to me. So when I was 12, he had bought a rental property. And so we all did our normal thing. We all had to help and fix it up. And so they had started one rental property, and actually, I think they did pretty well on that one. It was the second one where they sort of got in over their head, and I think got too involved in it. So by the time I was 14, I knew enough to just be dangerous. So I saved up money and put $3,000 down on a $10,000, beat up house, and spent 60 days straight, every night, every weekend, just fixing that thing up, and sold it for 45. And I sold it with a down payment. I think it was around $5,000, and then carried the note, and then just kept doing that. Then that evolved into me learning a lot about capital gains tax, and it's good to have a capital gains problem, but being inventive, as I thought about capital gains. I was like, well, man, I've made all this. So then I created a system where I would sell a house for less than I would buy it, sell a house for less than I bought it, and be able to take a capital gain loss, but then long term it would grow into a lot of wealth. So then I started doing a lot of those, and I would actually fix them up less. I would turn them much faster to do that, and so that grew to be something pretty substantial. And then so yeah, that's how I got into, I guess, real estate and notes and whatnot.
So you were pretty much a very young millionaire, if I'm hearing you correctly, right? You haven't really had to worry about money, other than and what's interesting is you came from, it sounded like a very 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 humble beginnings, where you didn't have money growing up.
Yes, definitely didn't have money growing up.
And it's always interesting. Out of all your siblings, are there others in the family that are like you that are just so entrepreneurial? I'm just curious on like how you became you, because just talking to you before the show, I'm just blown away. Actually, if I would like, I think I'm gonna put you up in my new like, hey, I want to be mentored by this person. And I talk to a lot of smart people, and I'm just listening to you earlier. I was like, oh my god, like, so how did you get that?
Well,
Like,
you should probably check yourself, and that's not a. But I would say I grew up on a reservation, small town, Southern Oregon, Chiloquin, and a very poor town. So I don't really call them entrepreneurs. I think when you're in a poor town in survival mode, I think everybody's a hustler because you just have to be. Now, I have learned since then that there are two types of entrepreneurs. And so that's something I do think, so my whole town, I would say they're all entrepreneurs because they're all in survival mode. Everybody there is hustling, trying to, get things going or create something. My parents are both entrepreneurs. I mean, that's what building is. It's what being a janitor is, even though they're on the small spectrum. But there's a lifestyle entrepreneur, and then there's a scalable entrepreneur. And the lifestyle entrepreneur is one who is, creating lots of new things, but they're doing it within their lifestyle. And so that means they're like, okay, here's where I want to live. So most of the time it's almost like, not having a vision past it. And I can't say I understood the difference myself, other than the fact that I didn't want to have to be a requirement for my business. I was like, well, that's not really scalable if I have to be there. Like if I don't show up, it shuts down. And I heard a lot of people talk about like you leave your business for 2 weeks, it shuts down. And that is the definition really of a lifestyle business. And there's lots of entrepreneurs and I give kudos to all of them. But my own self, I wanted to create something that's scalable. By scalability, there's so many different ways to do that, but that means you have to think of ways that make yourself less important in your own business. And so I would say that's the only thing that really makes me any different. But all my siblings are entrepreneurs. There's very few of them that have ever worked for anybody, but all of them, have created very successful businesses in a lifestyle kind of manner. I think the only thing that sets me apart is that I have a preference or a deference towards scalable. I don't want to be an important part of a business. I think it's great if I could like sell it or move it on and not be part of it. And that's, takes a different type of, thought process, but yeah.
Yeah. And that's what I already learned earlier today. It's like, I'm an entrepreneur for sure, but I've always been the most important piece of the entrepreneurship, which is a no-no if you want to scale. And using software, but that's extremely fascinating. Well, let's kind of fast forward. I mean, you have an amazing background, and you're involved with a lot of companies. You have a VC fund and so forth. But let's talk about TenantCloud, because our show is geared around real estate mostly. So TenantCloud, really, when did this idea come to you, and how did you roll it out? And can you kind of talk about like what it does now, what it's going to do in the future?
Yeah. So I love this question. It's an exciting one. I first stumbled upon this problem. I built some software for some rentals. So I built a fairly big single family rental business. We were doing this like, what was this in 2005? 2005, real estate was just taking off. And then in Oregon, it was definitely, at its peak in 2005. And so preparing it, with things that were growing, we had a new development. So we were taking land and we're developing it into single family rentals. We're buying fixer uppers. And then we had a property management company that was managing it. We built a site. And as I transitioned from Oregon to Texas, I sort of set that down, moved it under some property management companies. The business itself had grown into where it was, instead of hundreds of doors, it was thousands of doors, and focusing more into multifamily properties for obvious reasons. It's just economies of scale. It's like, why mess with one property when you can do, or, with lots of properties when you can do it with one. And so when I came to Austin, it's like, you start seeing like little properties again, right? I just can't help old habits. And so it's like, here's a 4-foot, man, I'll buy that. All right. So then I started buying them again. Next thing I know, I have this small little portfolio, and I'm like almost annoyed with myself because I'm like, I really don't have the time to do this. So I started like, playing it and saying there's got to be some software. And my guy who was servicing my air conditioner came and told me, he's like, you should let my wife manage all these, and she's never done property management. I was like, it's not really something you just wake up and you can do. So I kind of ignored him, and I got stuck in a bind where I needed somebody to help. And so I was like, all right, if she can even help a little bit, let's do it. So I had built, some software before, but not really tailored to management. But I looked, and there was no software out there really for the DIY landlords. And when I say the DIY landlords, you think of all the problems that a DIY has. And if you were to say, like, what's your biggest problem? Well, they would have a different answer for you depending on the day of the year cycle, the day of the month cycle, because there's so many problems, right? First one is like, obviously you need a tenant because a vacant property is a non-producing property. So like, get the tenant in there. But then after that, you have everything from rent collection, maintenance requests, scheduling, contracting, managing applications, storage, reporting. So you've got all these different problems. And then at the heart comes around, the February time period, you've got an accounting problem because now you got to file your taxes. And I'm not going to deny that I'm like most DIY landlords. And like, when it comes to tax time, you're just like, my Schedule E, you look at it and you're just like, I got this drawer full of receipts, but like putting those together is like a nightmare. And so you're just like, okay, I'm going to make it look as close to last year's because this will take me hours. And so that's where I was like, there's just nothing out there. So that's the core idea of TenantCloud, is that there was nobody solving that problem. That is like, man, there's got to be a lot of. So then I was like, well, how many people are there like me? And I didn't really know that there was much. I was like, maybe there's probably 100 of us. I don't know, that just kind of do it themselves. And as I dig into it, I find out that the DIY landlord makes up almost 70% of the rent transacted in the country. So not only was I not unique, but there's a lot of them. I was like, why has nobody offered to build them software? So the only software out there was for large property management companies doing multifamily. And it's a different problem. And so I was like, well, our core problem is like, we have tenants. They can be roommates. They can be all different fashions. They're tenants. They live in a house. They're going to pay rent, and they need to be like, I don't want to engage them any more than I have to. I don't want to drive to show them an application that they can just send to me. I don't want to have to go pick it up. I want to be able to screen it. I want to get them to sign a lease agreement without having to drive to show it again. And then I want to collect rent without having to drive and knock on a door. I want to be able to get the rent. And I want all those transactions to be automated, where I never have to talk to the software. If I want to go look at a report, it's automatic because it knows what it's doing. And then come tax time, I want it to show that based on the IRS Schedule E. It's like, it just seems like it should do that. And then if something breaks, I want to be able to have the tenant tell me what broke, let me look at it, and then send it to a service professional to give me a bid. And then I can look at many service professionals, or I can pick my regular. And then I can have the tenant and the service professional talk to each other. I have access to what they're saying, but without me having to like spend hours of scheduling. Like, okay, he says he can't be there this time. Oh, you can't be there. Okay, just to schedule a tenant and a maintenance guy, took like an entire weekend to get like one thing solved. So I was like, that needs to be all inclusive. And then if I want to scale my business, then let it do that too. Let it do all my accounting and keep all of it in. I can track all my properties to see how they're doing. And then if I want to grow and scale into a property management company, I can then do that too. And that's where we involved an owner. And so any transaction that happens, because now you have 4 different personas. You have tenants, service professionals, a landlord, and an owner, or in case if it is an owner, it's a property manager and not a landlord. But those 4 different personas, they're unique relationships, because your landlord and your tenant would never like be Facebook friends. It's a different relationship, but it's a connected relationship in so much that, if there's a transaction happening, it's a well-known thing. And if you're going to buy something to fix up a property, it's a well-known thing. So why would someone have to enter that again when you can just make that environment and ecosystem be automatic? And so that's really what TenantCloud is about, is to cut out everything that has to do with redundancy and really let the system operate. So it is your back office. If you're a DIY landlord, this software is easily your back office to do all of your accounting, do all of your maintenance, let you be a decision maker instead of the actual one doing it. And then when it comes tax time, you sleep a lot better because you have one little button, you print out a Schedule E on your 1040, and you're like, hey, I know exactly what to put in my form, and I can back it up. And the other thing that goes with that is if you're going to be a real estate professional based on the IRS, well, there's so many of these tax benefits in owning a rental property that people don't know that in order to benefit them all, you have to have an accounting software of record. And so it's, even if you keep all your receipts, it doesn't mean anything. If that's not your process for accounting, then that can be void. But if you have a proper accounting process in order, where a TenantCloud, and let's say you don't have receipts, the IRS will consider all your expenses there. And that's what's more important, is that having a software that does this for you is one of the fastest and best ways to make sure that when you, one, going to report your taxes, let them be based on what happened. And two, if you're going to get audited, it is your backup solution. And so it does everything. And then it also goes down to all rental applications. Every state and every county have different time periods of which you have to store those. And so it allows you to really be compliant in so many counties in so many ways. And it really seems, simple solution. There's an app for tenants. You can list your property, it gets you out. And then we built this. We ended up having like millions of tenants, and we have hundreds of thousands of landlords. And we have so many tenants now that we're looking for rentals. We're like, well, we can build them now. Like, why, if your tenant is going to be looking for something, make sure they find your property. So we can help landlords get their tenants on more of their own properties. And then in doing so, if they want somewhere else, then let that be within the network. So we can actually, now we have a tool that helps you find a tenant faster with the TenantMatch. It's almost like Tinder for tenants, as I call it. Excuse me. And so tenants will say, yeah, I'm looking for a property. And that will show up as a lead under properties that they're looking for within, whatever parameters your properties are. And now you can invite them to apply. You invite them to apply, and the tenants see it. They can look at it. If they like it, they can swipe right, fill out an application, or left if they don't. And it allows you to circumnavigate the whole listing process and helps you get leads much faster. So now I love it when I set up an account, and if I go for premium leads, like you turn it on and your property has like 20 leads already. They're like, these are people actively in this area looking for this. And now we've taken that, we've partnered with Rentler and College Pads and a few other listing sites. And so we've really been able to take and harness, ways that people used to go to Zillow and they used to go to apartments.com. And those companies have all changed their business model to where now they're a silo and you have to pay to get onto them. And so for ours, we've been able to build the largest network, especially in single family rentals, to find you a tenant really fast. And so it's just keeping it kind of in that ecosystem. But yeah, it's really a one-stop shop to kind of maintain your business as a DIY landlord and really to grow and develop your business in ways that are all the confusing, all the frustrating things that, stop someone from trying to grow their business. We've tried to automate and say, just make decisions. And so it's really like, and now that's why when I said, are you a remote landlord, we really are focusing on that. There's a lot more remote landlords now to where they're like, okay, well, and Austin, Texas is a good example. It's gone crazy. It's nuts here. When I moved here 15 years ago, our neighbor, they bought their house for $286,000. They just sold that thing for $1.1 million. I'm just like, I don't know what's going on. But to find an affordable rental here is difficult. And so now someone can be in Austin and say, hey, I'm going to buy one over here, I'm going to buy one over there. And all over the country, they can now manage a portfolio of 5 to 6 properties from Austin and be able to find a service professional, work with a tenant, find a tenant, move them in, and do very little that they ever have to actually go to the property.
That's amazing. And you could do it with or without a property manager.
Oh yeah, it's designed to do both. I mean, you can be a property manager, but it's really designed. It's your back office for whatever you want.
And I like the idea. A lot of my colleagues they really got into co-living, buying co-living, pad split type of properties, and this is a great tool because you can manage the whole process for each tenant too. So if you bought a single family home. So what these investors are doing, they're buying single family homes, and maybe they're adding an extra bedroom or two. They're putting 5 or 6 people in one house.
Gotcha.
And then they're charging 800 a room or whatever, and they're 5xing their normal cash flow of a long-term rental, or 4xing. And
It is
and
the
then
new duplex.
yeah, so it's a really good business model. But my thought process was like, oh, it's so hard to like manage it. But really, like, I'm looking at TenantCloud, I'm like, okay, like this problem's solved now. Everything about it is pretty solved. I mean, you can solve the problem of you could have a keyless entry, right? If I'm in Las Vegas, I'm buying properties in Pennsylvania or Indiana, I could have somebody install a keyless entry, so I could give people the code to do their walkthrough to make sure they wanted the property. They can go in and credit pull, background check, set up the lease. I mean, pretty much everything is done here. And then the best part is mom and pop landlords are notoriously bad at keeping books, and I'm one of them. I just hate it, but this is going to make everything easier. You can track everything and then print it out or email it to your tax professional, and your taxes are done. So,
and what's nice is the tenant has access to everything, so they can see their lease, they can see all their accounting, and it's automated for late fees. If they don't pay a certain time, it creates a late fee. So the burden is now for the tenant, but there's less phone calls, because now they're like, well, for any of those questions, I have it all in my app. And then if I have anything, I could, message on top of it, but it's going to put the onus really on the tenants to solve their own problems, because it's all available now to them. So that's the magic, is it cuts down all your phone calls, like a 70% reduction in phone calls.
And that's what we want, right? We want to buy real estate to hopefully become passive, right? As passive as you can be.
You're listening to the Investor Financing Podcast. We'll be right back after this break.
Hi, this is Beau, host of the Investor Financing Podcast. I appreciate you checking out our channel. On this podcast, we talk about real estate, investing, financing, business lending, and acquiring and expanding your business. I'm sure you will find some videos here that will help you build your business empire. There's a lot to see. Take your time and make sure you comment, like, and subscribe. Thanks again.
So where do you see TenantCloud going, and what are the next integrations that might be coming out? If you can give us some clues on some more problems you're going to be solving with TenantCloud.
So some big ones coming up. Really, COVID is what brought it around, and you mentioned it, to really go keyless. And so that'll all be built-in infrastructure where you can actually show the property remotely. So that's the next key. I've gone to so many showings, and anyone who's been a landlord knows it's so frustrating to go and show a property and nobody shows up. There's no bigger time waster to sit there for 15 minutes and no one shows up. So the real idea is to be able to fully remotely be able to show a property. So we're working with a couple of companies where you have a short-term code, it will go in, and then there's cameras throughout the house. You could literally give a video tour, or it can be a recording of the house. And so it literally can monitor people coming in, all the doors locked, and they go out. And then before you would let anyone in, it's already a verified user. And so you're not having to deal with just a stranger. You actually have, someone who is verified. They've gone through a background check, like a rental application in a general sense. And so it's a much easier, smoother way to kind of bring that in. And then in addition, some of the things we're going at is we have found that a lot of our landlords have investment properties, and they have lots of investment strategies behind them, and they want to work with other landlords. And so soon you would be able to sell your property and buy properties right in the platform with other landlords that are, working on the same exact thing. Because what we have found is most of our core base user are DIY landlords, these real estate investors trying to grow their own portfolio. And so this is, passive, income properties that they're operating. And so it's really now to bring those networks together where they can do a lot more. And so, those are two big things kind of coming out here in the next couple of years.
And I like that as somebody who's trying to grow a little bit larger portfolio, is that I see an opportunity for retiring landlords that are ready to kind of step down, where they have maybe 10 or 12 or 15 properties. Whereas an hungry investor, it would be nice to get an introduction and they say, hey, listen, I will sell these to you on terms because I don't want the tax consequence, and I know, like, and trust you. And then I get in on a deal. I take down 15 properties with only 100 grand out of pocket, and they're happy getting their, their installment payouts. And that, to me, that's a win-win. So that's what I'm looking for. I know people watching the show, that's what we're all looking for. But could there be a way to facilitate that? That would be phenomenal. Like
well, nobody wakes up and says, I want to be a landlord. It is the most trying job. It's thankless. No one appreciates it. It's not a dream thing for anyone. We do it as a, ways to a means. So really, it's the goal behind it, that financial independence that we get because of it is why we're willing to do it. So to find any solution that makes being a landlord a little better, I think is always a nice thing.
Yeah, that's awesome. This has been unbelievable. First, our pre going live, what we talked about, and then to listen about how you came about TenantCloud and what it's developed into. It's definitely something that if you're not using a platform like this, and I think there's a couple different tiers. There's a free tier, or there used to be a free tier, and there's obviously paid for if you want to open up the doors to all this stuff. It's very inexpensive, the bottom line. And so, like, if you're a landlord out there and you're not using a system like this, you're foolish. So go check out tenantcloud.com. And you can learn all the services and so forth. Joe, do you have where's the best place people can follow you from like an entrepreneurial standpoint? Do you have a podcast, or are you going to start a podcast?
The best one's probably Twitter, okay. Joe _Edgar_. So I do write regularly, some once a month now in Forbes and some others, but I usually post them on Twitter to kind of distribute them. So that's probably the best way. So.
All right, guys, I highly recommend. Listen, I tell you what, I've gotten a lot of nuggets today, like more so than I think any other guest out there that I've interviewed. So I've interviewed over 400 and something people. So that's a compliment to you because, I could see that you are a very wise entrepreneur. And I look forward to staying in touch with you to get some more nuggets from you, hopefully. And hopefully I can provide value to you, too, as well.
I love it. Appreciate it, Beau.
Thank you so much. Thanks.
I'll see you.